My name is Gerard McClendon, and this week I'm a recovering sexist. 70 years after Rosie the Riveter, we still haven't embraced women in the workplace. But it doesn't even matter anymore because they're dominating the workplace in skilled labor, technical, and professional jobs. Pandora came to us in the image of Rosie the Riveter, and women haven't shown signs of acquiescence. Do gender and sex really matter in 99% of all jobs? Purdue University scientist Dr. Niti Parashar and attorney Marissa McDermott join us on CounterPoint with Gerard McClendon.
And Willow Run, the world's largest plant producing a single item, the B-24, had a goal of 1 bomber an hour, a goal impossible to reach with manpower alone. Today, with that elusive goal achieved, Ford pays tribute to the women whose help made it possible, to American women everywhere whose valor on the industrial front has sped the day of victory. Staunch were our modern women as they answered their country's call, and in the uniform of the WAC and other services, released thousands of men for duty at the front. Other uniforms awaited other women, and from the deep blue of the Navy's waves to the pale blue of gas station attendants, they were worn proudly in the service of their country.
Thank you for joining us and watching CounterPoint. Call us at 844-777-9311. Send us a tweet. Send me a Facebook comment to Gerard MC. At the CounterPoint, we have Purdue University scientist and professor Dr. Niti Parashar and attorney Marissa McDermott. Ladies, welcome to the CounterPoint today.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. You know, we just watched the Ford Motor Company propaganda video that focused on Rosie the Riveter for the most part. The men went to war and the women had to fill these big shoes that everyone thought was impossible for women to fill. But the women did it in an amazing fashion and probably better than a lot of men could have done it. The two of you, both accomplished ladies in American society, doing expert things in your respective careers. But let's talk about misunderstanding. So, law, one of the most misunderstood professions in the world. Everyone thinks they're a lawyer, attorney McDermott. Physics, everyone thinks they're a physicist. They may have gotten an F in the class, but they think that they know the laws of physics. I want to thank you for being on the show. And I want to first start with some of your backgrounds, because so often, as a recovering sexist myself, we don't always believe that women should be in careers that they're in. And so it's easy for me to say, well, you know, I'm liberated. You know, women can do whatever they want to do. But we still live in a very male-dominated, you know, hegemonic society. So I want to lay out your biographies, first of all, and then we can move into this topic of sexism and careers. Attorney McDermott, first of all, where'd you grow up?
Actually, I grew up in Port Washington, Long Island, which is in New York. And I spent my childhood there. And I came out this way for law school, and I've been here ever since.
What were your favorite subjects in school, K through 12?
Actually, physics was definitely one of my favorites, and I'm not saying that just because the professor is here. Chemistry was one of my least, and physics was one of my favorite, but I was definitely more drawn to art, the performing arts and fine arts, and I ended up being an English major. And then at the end of that 4 years, I said, well, what can I do with that? And went on to law school.
When did you develop an interest in law? Was this before law school? Was this during undergrad? When did this occur?
Well, my mother would tell you that I've always had a very keen interest in arguing. So she used to joke when I was little that, well, you're going to turn out to be a lawyer because you love to argue so much. But really, I wouldn't say that I had an interest in law so much when I was younger. I had a very strong interest in reading. and writing. And I think that anybody who gravitates towards the law probably started off as a very strong reader. I was the kid under the blanket with the flashlight reading until I couldn't see and I had to go get glasses. But that's, I think, where it all starts. And then from there, it's a natural fit to go into the law.
Your undergrad, where'd you do it?
College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts.
And then law school.
And law school at Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame in South Bend.
Dr. Parashar, where did you grow up?
So I grew up for the major part in New Delhi in India. That's where I had all of my education. So typical to the education system in the US, I went K through 12. So when I was in high school, that's the only interesting part of my career change I can tell you. The moment I told my teachers I would like to pursue a career in physics, they all thought I was from La La Land because typically students in sciences at the time were expected, the norm was to go into engineering or becoming doctors. And I defied that notion and didn't sit very well with my teachers, but I was determined to do that.
So what was your favorite subject in school during the lower grades?
It was actually mathematics.
Really?
Yes, so I was this close to actually getting a degree, undergrad degree in mathematics, but then physics being more versatile. And then I come from a very strong background of high energy physicists in my family, starting with my dad and all of my siblings, that it kind of a natural environment I imbibed to continue to do what was already around me.
So you had some intra-family prerequisites when it came to
Yes.
the background of the sciences. Good, good. So the schools that you graduated from, you mentioned New Delhi, but what were those schools?
So I went to Hindu College. I did my undergrad in BSc or Bachelor's in Science Honors in Physics, went on to do my Master's in Physics, and then a PhD in High Energy Physics, also all at the University of Delhi.
I'm intimidated by the two of you right now because girls, and I didn't want to get this until later in the program, girls oftentimes are discouraged into going into the careers that you two ladies are in. Is there anything that you can say to encourage a 7, an 8, a 10, a 12-year-old girl right now saying, hey, you can become an attorney, you can become a physicist? Because throughout media, in schools, they're told that they can't. Attorney McDermott.
My message, I think, would be more to the dads. I have to tell you that for me, it started with my dad. I have a twin brother, and we were raised side by side together, treated no differently. My brother was out clearing brush, I was out clearing brush. My brother was spackling drywall, I was spackling drywall. And I was never treated any differently than him, and my father never expected any more or less of him than he did of me. So when I got older, I never thought of myself as a woman attorney. I thought of myself as an attorney. And that all started with my father always encouraging me and never treating me any differently. I think if more fathers did that, they would give that empowerment to their daughters without their daughters even realizing it.
So you had some environmental encouragement.
Yeah, I had a big Irish Catholic police officer father, big tough guy, who I know it's probably not the way that he was raised, but he really saw everybody as the same.
Yeah.
And he saw my brother and I as the same. And maybe our physical strength wasn't the same, but everything else was. And he never indicated there was any difference. And so, like I said, I didn't grow up thinking there was any difference. It really wasn't until later in life when you start getting influence maybe from outside that you realize that people expect less of you because you're a woman. I was never exposed to that in my childhood.
Yeah, intra-family encouragement. Do you think that's why you are a scientist today and professor today?
So I am actually going to relate to what Marissa just said, because for me, both my parents come from a complete village background. So my dad went on all the way from a complete poverty sort of state all the way to becoming a Fulbright fellow and earning his own PhD in physics. So for me, the role models were right there around me, and I just happened to be fortunate. But coming back to the question you asked regarding middle school girls, I think, again, the families need to be very proactive, and we need to take charge in terms of breaking free from some of the stereotype notions that we have. They're pretty archaic now, and in the scenario of the whole global perception, things are changing. And we need to expose our young girls to all the things that are out there, especially in areas where girls are understood not to take those careers as professions.
So, you've opened up a can of worms now because of the word choice, archaic. It's the 21st century. We should know that a lot of our notions are archaic, outdated, primitive in some sorts, should have died within antiquity, but we still harbor some of those feelings and notions and expectations and perceptions. Why do the archaic notions still exist? You know, we're supposed to be in this liberated society, but people still think that certain people, people of color, poor people, women, should be put in their place. Why do these archaic notions still exist in an industrialized world?
I think maybe some of it comes down to power and people wanting to have power, wanting to hold on to power. In my law practice, I do mostly employment law. And so I do handle a lot of cases where somebody is being targeted for harassment at work, whether it's because of their race, their age, their gender, disability. And it seems as though the people that are doing that targeting more often, it's them trying to exercise some power over somebody. And they can't do it maybe somewhere else, so they're doing it in the workplace. And, you know, we as a society need to stand up to that. And I think there's been more focus on that in the grade schools about anti-bullying, equality. We have some great programs in the high schools now that focus on inclusion of everybody. But sometimes people get to the workplace and it's kind of the law of the jungle. Yeah. And it's really employers and managers that need to step in from the top to the bottom, and they set a good example, and that will trickle down to everybody else in the workplace.
Yeah, archaic notions before we go to break.
Okay, so some of these notions are already very highly ill-founded and preconceived. In sciences, for example, this is rampant in all areas of sciences, not just physics, but physics in particular, because it's taken as a hard subject. So anything that's difficult, women should stay out of it is the notion. And as I said, this is very difficult to break free because, yes, sciences are not very easy. Sciences, you have to be very analytical. You have to have mathematical skills. So some of these harder subjects are not preferred over the softer subjects, which, yes, being a girl, you can easily slip in. And that's something I think we all have to work on.
Wow. You know what? We're going to go to break here right now, but I just have to read some Facebook comments to you guys that were quite interesting. Is sexism alive today? Here are a few of your comments from Facebook. Beverly says that TV news is horrible to women. The truth is coming out, Gerard, because TV news does not respect women. Still see them as objects and possessions of men. Isa Quintero says, comments on sportscaster's sexist remark of ESPN reporter Jessica Mendoza. What an idiotic statement. She is an athlete and gold medalist. Why wouldn't she be qualified? A lot of women love sports and are well versed in stats. He needs to go. Hey, stay with us on Counterpoint. We'll be back shortly. Tweet me, post on Instagram, or send me a message on Facebook. Let's start the conversation. Your voice is important on Counterpoint.
The hardest job of all was learning, but with expert instruction, intricacies of that most complicated of mechanisms, the airplane engine, were readily understood by women. It happened that a woman's delicate touch enabled her even to excel men in certain precision operations. Not peeping Toms, but riveters, learning how and where to put the 700,000 rivets that go into a single Liberator bomber. Some were done by hand, as with a conductor's punch. Others were fastened by a bucker, as she is called. They were as fast as men, if not faster, for rivets are but the buttons of a bomber to hold it together against a speed of nearly 350 miles an hour.
They were as fast as men, if not faster. Welcome back to Counterpoint. Our guests are Purdue University scientist Dr. Niti Padishar and attorney Marissa McDermott. Wow, so women can do things too.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
You know, and it is funny. That story needs to be told more, that women probably saved the war. See, you know, it's interesting how, being an educator, you read these textbooks, and textbooks only have to be approved in 2 states, Texas and California, and the rest of the country pretty much buys the textbook. But the textbooks that are approved in Texas and California, many times the books, they're written by accomplished professors. However, there's always something missing, and many times what's missing is the most vital component. You know, I put a post on Facebook a few weeks ago. I said, name 5 scientists. Then I put, name 5 entertainers and basketball players. No problem coming up with the basketball players and the entertainers. Everyone had a problem with scientists. It gets worse when you say, name 5 female scientists. Now people have to go look up the research, and it's frustrating. Let's talk about difficulty, ladies. What were some of the worst obstacles that you went through becoming an attorney? Attorney McDermott.
Gosh, I mean,
it's hard to get through law school. It is
hard. It is hard, and for me, you know, you may be accustomed to being something of a big fish in a little pond, and then you get to law school and you realize you're a little fish in a big pond. But I have to say that, you know, Notre Dame Law School, where I went, was one of the most nurturing places I think anybody could go to school. And they brought us all in on the first day, and they sat us down together and they said, you're not competing against each other. You're here to help each other. And we're not going to post any rankings. You're not going to know where you are with the rest of the class, because what's most important is getting through this, what's going to be a very difficult 3 years. Again, you know, when communication like that is given to people right at the beginning of their experience, and they're told from the beginning, this is what the relationship between you and your coworkers, your co-students, whoever it is, this is what the relationship should be like, and you lead from above and pull from above, lead from the front, that is going to have repercussions throughout those 3 years. So. You know, I know that my experience was very different than those of many other lawyers and law students, where it was very cutthroat. There was, you know, people stealing books or ripping pages out of books. They told us our first day, there are 20 doors to this library, none of which have an alarm on them. We trust that you're not going to do that to your fellow students. That kind of message, we're all in this together, men, women, all different races, we're all in this together. We need to pull together. We're going to be stronger as a group. That really needs to be, I think, communicated more effectively in schools and then later in workplaces.
PhD in high energy physics, University of Delhi. Did you have a similar experience? It's tough getting, I mean, a philosophical doctorate in high energy physics. Any obstacles?
I was actually very fortunate. I managed to finish my PhD in 2 years with 5 publications in peer-reviewed journals. So I didn't have to go through that. And in India, once you have passed the obstacles of just going through college, the level at which women are looked at is very different, with a lot of respect, unlike the difference I notice here in our US system, where women can be objects, you know, and the expectation level from women is very different here. So I didn't have that, but I have to say, when I started working, first as a postdoctoral fellow from the government of Italy way back in Pisa, and then eventually here in the US at Fermilab as a postdoc again, I did notice that there there seemed to be an inherent expectation from me, even being the only women or female postdoc in the research group, to be more productive than my male counterparts. And it hasn't ended. I see the same trend even in academia at my university, where again, I'm the only female physicist in the department, and I seem to have to prove myself way more than anyone else. So that I think is continually a process, and this gender bias issue really needs to be addressed as well.
Proving yourself becomes a battleground of sorts, because if we're all working in collegiality toward that common goal, we should be respected as such. But because you're the obvious woman in the room or the obvious person of color in the room, you're asked to do more, to be more, to be kind of a super physicist, a super attorney, as opposed to a great attorney.
Right. If I may add to this, it is certainly an issue of gender bias, no matter what your skin color is. But if you're a woman of color, such as myself, then there are additional biases that you're constantly fighting throughout.
I'm going to go right to Attorney McDermott on this. Legal aid clinic at Notre Dame. Did you work at a legal aid?
I did. Yeah, that was my first experience. Actually in the courtroom, we had to help, underprivileged people who couldn't afford attorneys, and we helped them in, a variety of different usually civil matters.
Did you ever have a situation where a person wanted a man to represent them?
I have to say, again, my experience as a whole, I think I'm very fortunate, and I think it just speaks to how far we've come as a nation. As far as respect from colleagues, other attorneys, I can maybe count on one hand times when I felt like maybe I wasn't treated as an equal. And the same thing with clients. I can really think of only one occasion where I had a criminal defense client who just simply, I had been assigned him as a public defender, which is one of the positions I hold, and he just simply would not listen to me. And he didn't say it was because I was a woman, but when you're just getting cut off and interrupted and nothing is sinking in, I realized that we had come to a loggerheads. There really wasn't anything I was going to do to change his mind about me. And so we just informed the court, and the court did assign a male attorney. But having practiced for 16 years, and I can remember only one instance where that's occurred, I think that really speaks to how far we've come as a nation. But you said something earlier that I thought was very interesting about look at the history books. It's called History, His Story. His story. And
You're making me feel bad now.
No, but we probably don't do enough to educate everybody about the people of color, about the women that have made a difference in history. Just yesterday, I saw on Facebook somebody had posted 5 very important women that we should all know from history. I've already forgotten their names, and I read every single word of that article, but I forgot their names because it's not a name that I've seen on postage stamps. It's not a name I learned about in my history books. So why are we forgetting that? Why are we forgetting the people of color that have gotten us this far? We have an obligation to those women and people of color to remind them this is who you should be proud of.
Yes, and that's exactly why our producers booked the two of you to be on the show today, because so often we're force-fed that stereotype, the perception, the expectation. And for us to have an attorney here who went to Notre Dame, a person who's running for judge, who just happens to be married to some guy, what's his name? Mayor Thomas McDermott. But, you have to be on the show to get that point across, that you're an attorney. You stand on that.
Mr. McClendon, I have to just, what's astonishing to me is that in 200 years of the history of Lake County, we've never had a woman circuit court judge, and we've never even had a woman run for circuit court judge.
Wow.
And I didn't know that when I filed my paperwork, but when I learned that, I said, gosh, it is about time. Why has this not happened yet? We need to encourage our young girls to get into these fields.
And we also have to encourage our girls to look for the God particle, right? That's what my producer Amanda was telling me. She said, we've got Niti Bhattacharya on the show today. Talk to
Yeah.
me. You know, what makes you interested in the Higgs boson? What's up with that?
So the Higgs boson is very fundamental to our existence, and this may not seem, that simple to begin with. But if the Higgs boson didn't exist, none of us would exist. Nothing. So it's that fundamental.
So you believe that subatomic particles have different forms of mass? Load?
Yes,
No, just
absolutely.
subatomic particles have the same mass and
No,
the same
they-
size.
no same mass.
I know
no
more than
same
you
size.
because I'm playing like I'm a physicist.
No, not same size, not same mass, but the existence of Higgs that was discovered in 2013 established and validated the fact that different particles have different masses based on how they interact with the Higgs field that exists all around, permeates through the entire universe.
I'm coming back to you because I got another question to ask you.
I hope you don't ask me a question about what she just
No,
said.
but I do want to ask you this. When it comes to what makes the law so beautiful?
Because it's always evolving. There is no such thing as the law. We have statutes, we have case law, but it's in a constant state of flux. And you see that we're still arguing about the meaning of the United States Constitution 200 years after it was written. So it's never a concrete thing. And the wonderful thing about being an attorney is you're always learning something new. I'll never forget one of my first cases I was involved in was at Bethlehem Steel. Remember Bethlehem Steel? Mm-hmm. And I had to go up there, walk in a steel mill for the first time ever, and just see, what was going on there. It was astonishing to me.
I appreciate you, ladies. Looks like we're running out of time.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you about your preference for electrons or top quarks. Quickly?
Top quark.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. I got to go part two on you. Hey, if you still believe that women have career limitations, you're on the wrong planet. Our guest today proved that, and actually men need to start upping their game. Insecurity and perceptions create discrimination, and it is time to respect people for who they are, especially women. Thank you for watching Counterpoint. Stay positive, keep your head up, and always be encouraged to voice your counterpoint. Have a good night.